Hello everyone, Robert Rinke, developer of Portofino, one of the developers of Portofino, here to discuss the structural integrity of Portofino. We are super proud of it, want to talk about it in detail. And the reason we're doing that is, of course, this building that collapsed, this catastrophe in Miami-Dade County, Surfside. So, first thing we did was we didn't rely on one structural engineer. That's very unusual. Typically you hire a good quality structural engineer, they're certified, and you move forward. We did that. We hired a super conservative, super good structural engineer, Roger Kraft, and he developed and designed this from a structural standpoint. But then what we did, we did two other things. One was we hired a second independent structural engineer, and we hired them as a peer review, and they ran completely the numbers again from scratch on their own, making sure that the building was correct. And we did that. We paid for that. Very unusual, very important on a development of this size not to have any structural design issues on that. Next thing we did was we paid for a wind tunnel test at Portofino. So that's where they take all the towers on the development, line them out in a wind tunnel, and they look at how the buildings react with wind going through them during a hurricane. And between them, we have so much distance between these buildings, a football field of distance between every building in every direction. We thought it was going to be no problem, but we went ahead and went through the wind tunnel test. And again, that's like a third set of numbers clarifying that we have this structural integrity at Portofino designed from the beginning into it. From the structural standpoint, also on any high-rise in Florida for the last 20 some odd years, you have to pay for a threshold inspector. What they do is they test every structural pour there is, send it to a lab, and get confirmation that the concrete pour met the structural strength. We used all high strength concrete on this building, and every single structural pour was tested and verified that it met that strength. The next thing we did structurally on these towers at Portofino is we used the very best piling system. We didn't drive the pilings, pounding them into the ground, which in my opinion can weaken and cause cracking or whatever. There's another type, more expensive, better piling system called the auger cast piling system. We did that at Portofino. So that's where they drill down into the substrate of the earth. First thing you have to do is get a geotechnical engineer out here on every site we're building a building and find out where the structural integrity, the core of the earth is, so the pilings are not just in sand. We actually find out where the core of the earth is. They drill down into that. They fill that with steel, rebar. They pour these pilings in place with high strength concrete into the substrate of the earth. To prove that all that is correct, you have to do a very expensive test piling where they do all this, they drill, they pour the piling, they let it set up, they bring a rig out here and put tension on that pile until it fails to prove the strength of this design into the substrate of the earth, to double test that this is correct, in place, done correctly. That's the piling system you have. There's 400 and some odd pilings underneath each building. And then there's a piling cap encapsulating 10, 15, 20 of these pilings at a time with huge piling caps securing all this in place. The other thing that at Portofino that is so overbuilt, and this is probably what we're most proud of at Portofino, is that we redesigned the buildings. Initially we designed it like most other buildings on the Gulf Coast where the superstructure was all concrete, but the exterior walls were lightweight steel stud, gypsum board, and foam. And that's the EIFS system. We hired a structural engineer, but we hired a water intrusion engineer that convinced us to go Williamson and Associates, the largest water intrusion consultants in the Southeast at the time. They may still be today. They convinced us to go with all concrete exterior walls. Our structural engineer very quickly told us it was going to be very expensive to do this because you add so much weight to the building. You have to therefore add so many additional pilings, strength of the pilings, size of the pilings. You have to support all that additional concrete exterior wall system that goes up, and it becomes a beast of a structure that you have to meet. And you have to, by the way, not only meet their numbers to the wind load and to the code and the strength, but they build a large safety margin. Code builds a large safety margin into those. So when you keep adding more and more weight to the building, you just keep making the building heavier, stronger, turns into a beast of a structure, and that's what you have here at Portofino. So every exterior wall is concrete, the whole superstructure is concrete. The foundation is built with these auger cast pilings and piling caps, and it is an awesome structure. So we wanted everybody to know how that was built and designed. And then you go into the next category, and that is waterproofing. It's very important. Two things that are critical to a high-rise on the Gulf Coast, in my opinion: structure, obviously, and then waterproofing. So again, we hired the top consultants, Williamson and Associates. We had our architect design the waterproofing. Then we hired Williamson and Associates to start from scratch, tell us everything they would do, and it added hundreds of thousands of additional dollars to the building with what they said to build the very best water intrusion. You have to do all these items. So the roofs are put on with, of course, an underlayment waterproofing, and then the roof tiles are put on with, they call it belt and suspenders, screwed and glued, RT600 epoxy glue with every single tile with a stainless steel hurricane clip screwed into that roof decking. That's how your tile is put on. The next most important issue is, how do you deal with the balconies? A lot of people, they just put maybe a paint coating or something over those balconies. We didn't do that. We put water intrusion membrane underneath tile on every balcony at Portofino. We ran the waterproofing membrane up the wall. So we have complete waterproofing underneath tile on every balcony at Portofino. And it's very important, as the buildings are 18, 20 years old and we start replacing tile on the balconies, very important that we do that correctly also. So we are working with water intrusion consultants to spec out the right products. And when anybody replaces their tile at Portofino, they have to have it inspected to make sure it meets these waterproofing criteria for the future as well. And then the building, they expect elastomeric coating on the building. So each building at Portofino has already gone through and recoated their entire building with elastomeric coating. They also recaulked every window, reglazed the windows at Portofino. So the board of directors here have done a fantastic job of maintaining these in a world-class manner. We had all these buildings redone, all inspected. They're in awesome shape. So it's important how you design it, then how you build it, and then how you waterproof it, and then how you maintain it. And letting you know, even the commercial doors and windows we put in here were all FCO, the best you can get, in our opinion, very expensive. Those are all the different components at Portofino that are in place. So with what had happened in Miami, you know, we realize there's lots of publicity on that. There's a lot of older buildings that are not designed anywhere near this way in Florida. But we did want you to know what was done at your development here at Portofino, and Beach Club and Verandas. And we're super proud of it. And these buildings will be here for a very, very, very long time. Thank you.